we meet a man who claims that not only is time travel possible, but that he was employed to do it. This is not the colorful claim of a New Age mystic, but the assertion of a distinguished US Army officer whose journeys into the past were carried out as part of a top-secret government program.
We saw ourselves standing in the passenger cabin of this aircraft. And we kept watching this aircraft explode. We would be asked to go back again to the moment just before it exploded. We'd be able to try to pinpoint where this explosion took place.
In 1988, David Morehouse, a major in the United States Army, was assigned to a new post at a top-secret unit of military intelligence. Discreetly housed in 2 wooden sheds on an army base at Fort Meade in Maryland, the unit was so clandestine that Morehouse didn't discover what went on there until he met his commanding officer.
Peering at me across the top of his knuckles, he said, "What we do here, young man, is select and train individuals to transcend time and space."
Now that you're in the room, change your perspective. Move up 10 feet and tell me what you see.
To view persons, places, or things remote in time and space, and to gather and report intelligence information on the same. And when he said that, I nearly fell out of the chair.
David Morehouse was an outstanding young officer with an exceptional record. A company commander with the Rangers, the Army's elite fighting division, he was destined to wear stars. But 4 months prior to reporting to Fort Meade, Morehouse's glittering career nearly ended. During a training exercise in the Jordanian desert, a stray round struck him in the head. The bullet should have killed him, but miraculously it lodged in his helmet. As he lay unconscious on the desert floor, Morehouse claims he had a vision of bearing a message.
The words that were given to me were essentially this: you have chosen the wrong path in life and you're to choose a new path, and that is to be a path of peace. I had no idea what those kinds of words meant. I was not some starry-eyed New Age guru. I was a shaved head, Ranger, company commander, special operations infantryman.
To his amazement, Morehouse discovered that far from being invalided out of the Army, he was being recruited as a psychic spy.
Night, sir.
The psychologist suspected that the blow from the bullet had released a latent psychic ability. Late into the night, Morehouse pored over the transcripts from Operation Grill Flame, a covert espionage program.
There was an individual referred to as a monitor and an individual referred to as a viewer. The viewer was describing events, persons, and places distant in time and space to the monitor. One of the most chilling accounts was reading the viewer saying to the monitor, "I think I'm outside the building where you want me to be now. What are your directions?" And the monitor saying to the viewer, "Pass through the wall and describe the contents of the room. Pass through the wall and describe the contents of the room." Those were hair-raising words.
For 20 years, the US government had invested millions of dollars into a series of ultra-classified projects like Operation Grill Flame. Psychics were recruited to gather military intelligence through a process called remote viewing. Morehouse first learned to control his brainwaves to enter an altered or semi-hypnotic state, unlocking the door to the unconscious. Then, as his mind separated from his physical body, he claims he was able to remote view, to travel in time and space, and view people and events from the past.
And I would drop through this tunnel, and the sensation was so physically overwhelming to me that often I began to get nausea.
Having entered an altered state, the remote viewer is ready to begin his assignment. The monitor gives him the coordinates of the target.
Your coordinates are 2175 and 0169. Access the target and describe its location.
The coordinates are random. They don't relate to any physical object. They simply act as a psychic map reference, the essential trigger for a remote viewer.
You begin to drop into this target area and things become perceivable by you. You're seeing the colors, you're smelling the smells and tasting things.
Now move 200 feet to your right.
The monitor begins steering you around in this particular target area. You actually move about in the target area in this ghost-like phantom form that's projected forward or backward in time and space. And that's what a remote viewing session is like.
After 18 months intensive training, Morehouse became fully operational. He now began to work on highly sensitive targets, political and military. In February 1988, U.S. Marine Lieutenant Colonel William Higgins, working for the United Nations in Beirut, was taken hostage.
In order to get me released,
A year later, the CIA put an urgent question to the remote viewing unit at Fort Meade. Was Higgins alive or dead? Morehouse and his colleagues set to work. Guided only by a series of random coordinates, Morehouse began to see images of a small, enclosed room. Late one night in December 1988, all members of the remote viewing team were summoned for an emergency session.
What's up?
I don't know, they called us all in.
You gotta be kidding. They need all of us?
Yep, the whole team.
But that never happens. Serious stuff, huh?
It sure is. And you can forget that party of yours. We're here till we finish.
Your coordinates are 0307 and 7102. Access the target and describe what you see.
There was a tremendous amount of pain involved with this particular target. We saw ourselves standing in the cabin of this aircraft. And we kept watching this aircraft explode. And then we would be asked to go back again and to relive it again, go right back to the moment just before it exploded again and be able to try to pinpoint where this explosion took place.
Hours later, the target of the mission was revealed to the team.
What we were looking at was Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, which we were forced to relive over and over again. And it was literally within hours of that aircraft exploding in midair that the remote viewers were providing information to the Defense Intelligence Agency that stated that there was an explosion that took place in the front left quadrant of this aircraft below the passenger line and in front of the wings. And in fact, when the evidence was made known, that was indeed where an explosion took place.
The remote viewing program takes a more sinister turn, putting David Morehouse under tremendous pressure. He has to decide whether he is prepared to use his gifts as a weapon of death. U.S. Army officer David Morehouse has undergone intensive training to become a psychic spy, but the onset of the Gulf War forces him to search his own conscience.
In November 1990, Saddam Hussein threatened to destabilize the Middle East. America's need for military intelligence was paramount. At Fort Meade, David Morehouse and his colleagues were now asked to use their psychic powers to a more sinister end.
Saddam Hussein actually accused the United States openly in the media of using or employing psychics against him. And everyone looked at him and just thought, what a madman. But in actuality, we were indeed targeting him psychically.
Morehouse vehemently opposed this new strategy known as remote influencing. He believed it was an unjustifiable use of the remote viewer's abilities.
When I realized that we're reaching out to kill with it, I felt that I had a moral and an ethical responsibility to violate my security oath and to tell the story about this to the American people.
Morehouse decided to go public, but the tale of the Pentagon's involvement in psychic espionage was already beginning to emerge. In 1995, the CIA admitted the existence of Operation Grill Flame and its predecessors. In the wake of the negative publicity which followed, the remote viewing unit was closed. But he's determined it should be used for humanitarian rather than aggressive purposes.
For so long, this was just hidden away. It should be something that's brought out to help all of humankind, not being sequestered away as a weapon of war or as an espionage tool.
Carteret, New Jersey, a residential suburb on the outskirts of New York. Earlier this year, a local man went missing.
We weren't concerned for about the first couple days that there was any suspicion of foul play, but then after we actually got into the investigation, then it became a little bit of a more serious matter. We tried everything, we looked everywhere, we talked to everyone. In this case, it was like he just disappeared off the face of the earth.
The investigation was running into the ground. As a last resort, Deputy Chief Nagy approached David Morehouse. He persuaded him to come to Carteret to hold a remote viewing session at the police station.
I had no idea what it was that I was looking at. I just obviously knew by nature of the fact that I was working with a police department that it obviously had to be something sinister.
Here are the coordinates. 6571 9304. Access and describe the current location of a missing person.
I began stepping into the ether. And the longer I stayed in there working on the target, the more clear the vision became about what the target looked like. And I just started unraveling this thing, looking through the eyes of a dead man.
He was in there for about 90 minutes. He came out almost a completely different person. It was as if he worked an 8-hour shift.
Gentlemen, this is Dave Morehouse. As you know, Dave's helping us with our investigation. He's just concluded a remote viewing session on the case, so listen carefully.
Thanks, Dennis.
The police immediately took Morehouse to the area of the Carteret waterfront which resembled his drawing.
I found the spot and said, this is it. This is where I stood. This is where I stood in apparitional form in the ether and looked across this water to that factory, to that power plant, and said, his body is somewhere around here.
The police searched the area but found nothing. 3 weeks later, the body of the missing man surfaced a few hundred yards downstream, precisely where the current would have taken it had the body been dumped at the site of Morehouse's drawing.
Whether it was Major Morehouse looking through the eyes of a dead man or being in the same location, the fact is there was a remote viewing to that location. No one knows how it works, they just know that it works. That a random set of 8 numbers can produce a scene remote in time and space, location and date.
It's chilling to me to come back to see how accurate the remote viewing session is. And it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening to think that this potential has been locked up as a weapon of war and as an intelligence collection tool when this is really where it ought to be used.
2 months later, David Morehouse has returned to Carteret.
Now, if you go back to this training process that we talked about,
he's been invited back to teach police officers the techniques of remote viewing.
whatever this is a photograph of inside of here, that's not what you're going to be looking at. You're not going to work this photograph. You're going to transcend time and space. These guys deal with life on the streets, and now you're talking to them about entering an altered state and stepping into the ether and gleaning targeting data, etc. But I was amazed how well these police officers did. They were accurately describing targets remote in time and space that they had never seen or heard or had no idea.
A lot of people will think you're crazy or you're a lunatic or you're off the wall, but all I could say is if they took the course, they were trained in it, at the end of the training, they'll know. They'll be convinced.
A freak accident in the Jordanian desert had repercussions that no one could have predicted. He claims he has a rare gift, which he is happy to pass on to others.
Remote viewing is the greatest gift that we can give human beings. We can either wander through the next 50 years of life somewhat lost and confused, or we can have this ability to become hyper-intuitive and to know the answers to things without really knowing how we know it. And that's what I see the future being.
What's got Billy so spooked? What is it? Billy. What the hell is wrong with you? There's something in those trees. I guess it's nothing, Major.
Billy, you know something. What is it? You ain't afraid of no man.
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no man. We're all running.
This was never about money for us. It was about us against the system. That system that kills the human spirit. We stand for something. To those dead souls inching along the freeways in their metal coffins, we show them that the human spirit is still alive.